numbers of rhino poaching in national parks. So the work I was doing covering these issues led me to work with data. So I started working with forest fire data, deforestation data, and I realized that for dealing with these issues, which very often when you're reporting are very local, you're talking about a small farmer in the Amazon region doing slash and burning, but that has some kind of a global implication. Satellite data, for example, is very useful and very effective to tell this bigger story, like of the environmental change. So working with this data led me to create one project that I invite you to know. It's called infoamazonia.org, which is a platform which puts together different layers of data about mining concessions, oil concessions in the 9 countries of the Amazon, and creates this network of journalists writing stories in their local countries and combining what we try to do. The story that we're trying to create is this dialogue between the narratives on the ground and the data which comes from the satellites. So we're really trying to create contextual layers, and that's one of my main works nowadays as well. It's really pushing a kind of data journalism, which is we are calling geojournalism, because it's the capacity of telling a local story and creating this dialogue between a bigger context given by the satellite data. So,
Kate, you're a computer scientist. Talk to us about your work.
Well, I actually started out in the social sciences as a professor, and I have the extreme privilege of getting to work in 2 amazing interdisciplinary spaces. One is at MSR, where I get to work with theoretical physicists, with specialists in machine learning and information retrieval, with economists and anthropologists, and the other is at MIT at the Center for Civic Media, where I have extraordinary colleagues and truly just some of the most gifted students you can imagine. And several years ago, I started doing what I would call sort of large data studies of the way that people would communicate after a major disaster. So I was looking, first of all, at the huge floods we experienced in Queensland in Australia, and then at Hurricane Sandy. And I was really captured by the power and the potential of what you can do with enormous amounts of data. But I also started seeing a couple of problems emerge. And on one side, those problems are essentially epistemological, basically about how big data sees the world, that more data is better, and that somehow correlation is pretty much as good as causation. That started to worry me. And on the other side was ethics. How do we protect people who are represented in these data sets? There's some very sensitive data there that can be used to produce what's being called algorithmic discrimination. So my passion at the moment is thinking about how we might generate really strong